breathe in that spirit that is in this holy place that has been demonstrated so many times. So, join with me in consciousness. I know that God is here. I am part of God. Every bit of me is God. And that all the qualities of God are mine. Love, abundance, peace, free from worry. And that is true for everyone that is in this place tonight and all the people that would like to be in this place tonight, but for some reason couldn't make it. So I now am going to release this prayer into the law of mind, and please join with me in saying, and so it is. And the reason that I'm standing right here was that one of the things that I love about being a practitioner is that we have this thing called the prayer wall. We've all seen that. And 2 weeks ago, we had a prayer wall. I was standing right here. Dr. Heather was standing here. We're all lined up, practitioners, ministers. People are coming up. You know, every time we have space, I'd wave. But the third person showed up. I've never seen this person before. I won't even describe who they were because I didn't know them. I said, okay, what do you need? Well, I need a place to live by 5 o'clock tonight, and I need a new car because my Mercedes is leaking oil and I don't have the money to fix it. So we did a treatment. I did suggest that she might want to go to the Mercedes dealer and see if they had any trade-ins. She wanted a Toyota. Okay. So, the day after St. Patrick's Day, I get this beautiful card in the mail. Happy St. Patrick's Day. There's a little note in there. There was a little green coin. And she says, guess what? That Sunday, after I went to your church, by 5 o'clock, I had a really nice place to live. And I followed your suggestion, went to see the Mercedes dealer, and we're working out a deal which I think is going to go, and I'm going to get myself a Toyota Corolla. So, you know, all this stuff works. It works all the time, 24 hours, 365. So I have lots of, my demonstrations in my life happen all the time. Like I've got doing this guy's trip that's coming up to, we're going to go to Dallas. And I was saying, how are we going to get to the airport at LAX at early in the morning? And then I saw my friend Hans. Hans, you want to take 3 guys and take us up to LAX? You know about that. You're going to do it. So everything gets happened, everything, I don't sweat it anymore. You know, hey, can't send me back to Vietnam, right?
So all is well.
Can't send me back, so life is good. Life is great. So, Mary, we would be honored. She's not,
No. I'm next.
You're next, okay. Here we go.
Thank you, Patrick. That was wonderful. No, I'm next. I get to say a little something. So going along with the theme of love tonight, and the theme that we started with the video of the animals. And who read your Science of Mind magazine today for the 20th of March? Oh yes, we've got several. Well, then just close your ears. I'm just going to repeat. Such a good story. So this is in this month, and for today, the first day of spring. And it starts out with Ernest Holmes saying this. Well, the topic of the day is oneness with all life, and we saw that in the video, of course. Love is an essence, an atmosphere, which defies analysis, as does life itself. It is that which is and cannot be explained. It is common to all people, to all animal life, and evident in the response of plants to those who love them. Love reigns supreme over all. And so this is the story. If you saw Marine veteran Jacob, it wouldn't appear that he suffered any residual injuries from his 8-month tour as a combat medic in Iraq. But that is far from the case. After his service, he began to suffer debilitating panic attacks from post-traumatic stress disorder. Today, through the love of a dog, he manages his PTSD with grace. Black Labrador Maya came to Jacob through Puppies Behind Bars, an organization that has prison inmates train service dogs for wounded veterans and first responders. It gives the inmates a sense of purpose. It allows them to serve rather than take from society. And most importantly, it allows them to feel the unconditional love of an animal. What struck me about Maya and Jacob's story is the incredibly close bond that they have, with Maya intimately attuned to Jacob's emotional state. If he begins to have a panic attack, she jumps on him and licks his face until he's calm again. Even the simple act of petting Maya soothes Jacob. With Maya, he went from being suicidal to finding purpose in his life. There are many examples of the healing power of animals, a phenomenon that scientists are just now starting to confirm. But the more importantly, our connection with animals serves as a reminder that we are all one with all of life. The same love that created us created every living and non-living thing. Animals are equally as divine as we human beings. And the affirmation, I recognize and celebrate my oneness with the eternity of life. I love that story. And moving right along, we'll go right into looking for love in all the wrong places. A warm welcome to Mary Brogdon.
Thank you. Yeah, hearing that story, I wonder why it is that there are so many people in the world who don't feel loved. Mother Teresa is reported to have said, "There's more hunger in this world for love and acceptance than for bread." The idea of this talk and the title for this talk came to me after I found this book, Judgment Detox by Gabrielle Bernstein. I happened upon it last November, and I bought the CD version of the book, listened to it in my car on a trip back from Las Vegas. I listened to it again and again and again. And then I ordered the book in print and the workbook that comes with it. And then I said, I gotta share this information. This is a game changer for me. And I think there are a lot of people in my community who would also like to hear this. So I told Dr. Heather I want to do a book study, and she said, okay. And I had 14 people who signed up for the book study. There was some attrition, but 7 of us completed the class last Monday night.
Oh, great.
And we had a celebration, and we had sharing of some of our our miracles that we had experienced while studying this book. And just to remind you, a miracle is defined by A Course in Miracles as the removal of any blocks to our awareness of love's presence. And another definition that's shorter and I like is that a miracle is any shift in perception. So among our group, we had a few miracles that we felt very blessed by. And so what this book informs us is that judgment is a misdirected attempt to find love and connection. I like her detailed explanation of how that is, why that is. But it's a little technical, and so it's kind of hard to put in a concise form. So I'll just try to summarize it. Most of us, when we're born, we come into this world knowing our true nature, knowing that we are love. And we experience oneness with all that there is in our small little world. And we see the joy on the faces of those who love and adore us. We, in our limited way, we give love and we receive love from those around us. And everything is beautiful until at some point we recognize that we are not all this. Something happens that causes us to feel separate. And when we do that, we have a disconnection from our true nature. And we keep trying to get back to that. We try a lot of different ways to get back to that. And for some of us, it's a traumatic experience. For some of us, it's a seemingly insignificant event in our lives. I was trying to recall a time in my early childhood when separation was my experience. And this is the earliest memory that I have so far. When I was about 4 years old, my mother and I moved from our home in Fort Worth to Phoenix to live with some relatives. It was a temporary move, but at the time I didn't know that. All I knew was we left my dad behind and I was living in a strange place. But I liked it. I liked a lot of things about it. And then I was enrolled in preschool, and it was my first classroom experience. It was the first time I was left in the care of an adult who didn't love and adore me. And it was my first experience with that many children, all competing for the same things, it seemed. And a small group of these children were aware of me, and I became the object of their curiosity. They said, "Where are you from? You talk funny." I said, "I'm from Fort Worth." "Where? Where is that?" "Where did you say?" "I'm from Fort Worth, Texas." And they said, "Fort Worth? You from Fort Worth?" And they got the biggest kick out of teasing me over that. And it continued. It followed me home. And after school, there was a fight. Rocks were thrown, I threw a rock that hit a kid in the head. There was blood, and I found myself in a heap of trouble. Now, Phoenix did not feel like a safe place for me. So that's my earliest memory. Maybe you can think of a time in your life when you realized that you were not the object of everyone's love and adoration, and you felt separate and alone. Well, our reaction to feeling alone and separate is fear. And we try not to feel that discomfort in our life. So we project it out onto the world. We also, at some point in our childhood, most of us got the message that we weren't enough. We were not smart enough, or strong enough, or pretty enough, or we lacked some desirable quality. And we began to feel inadequate, which is also a painful feeling for a child. So we project that out onto others. And we judge others then for inadequacies that we perceive in them. And Gabrielle Bernstein says that that is an addiction that develops over time, because the judgment becomes a habit. It becomes a cycle of judgment and judgment, projection, guilt, shame, projection, self-judgment, more guilt, shame. And it seems I can accept that. I believe that that's probably true for me, at least, because I judge everything in my life. I judge others for the things they say, for the way they say things, for mispronouncing the words that they use, and especially for mispronouncing names of other people, and particularly if they don't seem to notice or care that they're doing it. I judge others for the way they treat others. I judge them for the way they behave in public. I judge people for the way they do things, because it's often different from the way I would do it. I judge people for the way they dress. I judge them for the way they speak. I am particularly critical of people who use the F word as every part of speech and multiple times in one sentence and think nothing of it. Yes, I do that. It's not just people that I judge. I judge places, objects, events. I judge everything in my life. Now, I want to know how many of you are saying to yourself right now, gee, I used to think Mary was a nice person. I'm beginning to wonder. I never knew she was so judgmental. May I have a show of hands?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the rest of you either aren't brave enough to raise your hand, or you're thinking, so what? Everybody judges. What's the problem? Well, it's only a problem if you're looking for love and connection. Judging the people in my life serves to keep me separate, and that is not the way to find love and connection. Judging other people temporarily, at least some of the time, it temporarily makes me feel better about myself, because in comparison to them or what they're doing, I see myself as better than. I've spent a few dozen years seeing myself as better than other people. But that is not in alignment with what I believe today. And that is not who I want to be in the world. Enter Gabrielle Bernstein, going to help me heal this relationship that I have with judgment. And one of the things I love about what she says is that we don't have to give up judgment completely.
Oh, thank goodness.
Thank you, God. Her goal, and I've made it my goal, is to notice when I'm judging and as quickly as possible return to love and oneness. And she says that the goal is to also shrink that time it takes between I had the judgment and now I'm feeling love again. So it's because I'm in this teaching. And I came to learn that God is all there is. And love is a synonym for God. So love is all there is. And therefore, since I am part of God, I am love. But why is it I don't feel loving all the time? And so it's this thing about the disconnect that occurs when we realize that we are separate, and how we project that out on other people in order to make us feel more safe. I had so many notes, I could never talk about all of this. So she talks about how the ego comes into play. The ego thrives on our feeling of separation, and the ego voice in our head reinforces our separation, convincing us that we are more special or less special than others. And that's the beginning of the cycle. And we repeat this cycle until it becomes a habit, and it strengthens the neural pathways in our brain so that eventually it is so automatic we're not even aware of it. And judgment, she says, is an addiction, a response to a deeply rooted trauma. The first trauma being the separation from love. And then choosing fear and separation over love dissociates us from our truth. We become fragmented, and we inadvertently turn our back on our inner being. We become obsessed with this outward projection of who we think we are. Feelings of guilt and sadness wash over us because deep down we know we've turned our back on love. And since we can't fully understand or process these feelings of guilt, that's why we judge others. She says, judgment as an addiction, like any good drug, will anesthetize our pain and redirect our focus. It can even get us high. Gossip is a great example of that. When we get together with others to talk about someone else in a judgmental way, we're avoiding our own wounds. We use judgment as a drug to numb our pain and get high on someone else's pain. Gossip is especially nasty because it gives us the illusion that we're bonding with these friends. And instead, we're just banding together to heap our pain onto another person. Gossiping can give us a buzz because it provides a temporary relief from the self-judgment and attack. The voice inside our head says things like, I'm not good enough. Why did I make that mistake? Stupid. I'm ugly. I'm not smart enough, and so on. These self-inflicted behaviors are just another form of the addiction. We unconsciously choose to judge rather than feel the pain beneath our wounds. And she says for us to break the cycle and heal this addiction, it's necessary to expose our core wounds, bring them to the light for healing. So she gives us several exercises to help with that. And I'll just briefly tell you what some of them are. No, if time permits, I'll tell you what all 6 of them are. The first one is to become aware of how much we judge. Witness that we're making judgments, and then the next step is very critical. Don't judge yourself for judging. Just observe yourself. Let it go. In the first week of our book study, we made a list of the judgments we became aware of. Then we looked to see if there were any patterns in these judgments. We asked ourselves, who or what am I judging? How does it make me feel? Why do I feel justified in making the judgment? And what moment in my life triggered me to feel justified in this judgment? That can be an ongoing process for the rest of my life. The purpose is to uncover our deep wounds. And it's an important first step in detoxing from judgment. In step 2, we talked about the exercise of tapping, also called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. It starts by talking about an issue, our most pressing issue, tapping here on the karate chop point, and repeating that pressing issue 3 times, and then tapping on various energy points on our body. And she gives us a couple of scripts that are very helpful. Just saying these things without even tapping moved. As I was listening to it for the first time, and I was driving the car, so I wasn't tapping, I just moved. I shifted my perception about something that I was judging. I found it very helpful. And there were at least 2 people in our class that said for them it made a huge difference. The third step is called putting love on the altar. She talks about praying for guidance to release our judgment. Pay attention to the guidance and then follow the guidance. She gave us 5 examples of prayers that she uses that could help us to release our judgment. The one is called the prayer for surrender. We choose to release our judgment, turn it over to a higher power, and ask to see through the eyes of love. Another one was called the prayer of acceptance. This is one from the big book of AA. I didn't mention earlier, a lot of what is taught in this book comes from Gabby's experience as a student and teacher of A Course in Miracles, and another piece of it comes from her experience in recovery. At one time in her young adulthood, she was a druggie. And I love this prayer from the Big Book. It says, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that that person, place, thing, or situation as being as being exactly the way it is supposed to be in this moment. And the next prayer is from A Course in Miracles. It's the prayer to choose again. It's just one line. Today I will judge nothing that occurs. It's repeated throughout the day as often as necessary when we are tempted to judge. The final prayer is called a prayer to forgive our thoughts. It's also a simple one-liner. I forgive this thought and I choose again. Step 4 in the judgment detox is seeing for the first time. In order to change a judgmental thought about someone, it's helpful to practice self-acceptance first. Then we accept that the other is a reflection of ourselves. We see them as being the same as us. The quickest way to see the light in another is to see the light everywhere. So for 1 week, we practiced, the light in you is all I see. Saying that throughout the day, to ourselves, but to everyone we meet. The light in you is all I see. I found this one particularly helpful to me last week. I was working as a Lyft driver, and I picked up 2 women and a man in Tustin who wanted to go to Disneyland. From the moment they got in my car, the 2 gals in the back seat talked a mile a minute, and everything they said was funny to them. And they were laughing in this high-pitched laughter. And it was driving me nuts. I found myself feeling quite irritated. And I had a talk with myself. I said, it's time for me to call it a night because I'm so irritable. I just need to go home from here. I'm making this my last ride. So I gave the app, the Lyft app on my phone, the instruction, turn on last ride. But then I got a hold of myself and I decided to change my thoughts. And I started saying to myself, the light in you is all I see. The light in you is all I see. The light in you is all I see. And it took many repetitions, but before long, I started to calm down, and I was feeling better about them and feeling like I could finish the ride. And then all of a sudden, I looked up, and it was the fireworks display at Disneyland. The light in you is all I see. And I said something to the man in the front seat sitting next to me, and he and I both appreciated it for a little bit. And then the women saw a flash, and one of them said, "What was that?" He said, "It's the fireworks." Oh, and they got quiet for a minute while we all enjoyed the fireworks. There was silence for a little bit, and I was so happy. The light in you is all I see. And then we arrived at Disneyland. They got out of the car, and life was good again. Step 5 in the detox program is called Cut the Cords. Gabby leads us in a guided meditation in which we see the person before us who is the object of our judgment. And we visualize that there is a dark, thick cord that connects us both. And at some point, we, in our imagination, we pick up a heavy sword and we strike the cord, cutting it completely, severing the tie between us, the energetic tie. And then we visualize that cord falling to the ground and dissolving into the ground, disappearing completely. Then we see the person in their light and innocence. So when we did this meditation in the class, and a few people tried it on their own later in the week, and they reported back that it was a moment for them, that there was like a life changer with the one particular situation in their life that they'd been judging for a long time. In step 6, we dealt with the practice of forgiveness. So, yeah, forgiveness is important, and it's often something that we think we do once and it's done, but I think it's a lifelong practice. And I was asked, how do you know when the forgiveness is complete? And my standard answer to that is when you talk about it. If you bring it up at all, and if you talk about it, you still have energy around it, then it's not complete. There's more to do. I was also asked during the past couple of months, how can you distinguish, how do you know when you're judging, and how is that different from an observation? After all, if I'm making an observation about someone and it happens to be true, is that a judgment or is that an observation? When I hear that, I have to giggle a little bit, because my judgment is that they're just saying that because they're trying to justify their own judgment. They know it's judgment, but they don't want to think that. So Gabby gives the definition up front in the book. It's simple and straightforward: separation from love. She also gives us some other clues as the book progresses. It has to do with how judgment makes you feel. Usually, if you're in judgment, you feel bad about yourself. And you start to judge yourself. And judging yourself makes you feel even worse. Judgment is also when your peace is disturbed. You know it because your energy gets all worked up and you start to rant. It happens before you even know it. You take a breath and you go, oh, okay. Basically, we're judgment machines, and we're doing it all the time. I don't believe I'm the only one. So the only thing wrong with it, since it's so commonplace, we have to learn to live with it. It's just a problem if we want to find love and connection. I wanted to share with you that I want it. I want love and connection. And a few years ago, I took a class with Reverend Patty, which was called My Sacred Covenant. And we learned how to write a sacred covenant. This is what I wrote. My Sacred Covenant. The name of this covenant is love and service. The promise, we picked a verse from some book of wisdom. In my case, it was the Bible. God is love. I abide in love, and God abides in me. My purpose is love. And my vision is expressing God's love through and as me. And I wrote 6 intentions under that. Number 1, to be a blessing to everyone on my path. Number 2, to allow the people in my life to be exactly who they are and give up any desire I may have for them to change. To use my voice for good. To engage in joyful and heartfelt relations with family and friends, which stem from my loving acceptance of self. To create a safe space for healing and transformation to occur. And 6, to live in financial freedom. So that gives me all the reason I need to detox from my habit of judgment. And so it is.
Oh, Mary, that was absolutely wonderful. Dr. Michael Beckwith, 22 years ago, I went to hear him, and he talked about judgment. And you just clarified everything for me. And I've been waiting 22 years. He said, yeah, it's never too late. He said, there's judgment, and then there's opinion, and then there's observation. Well, you explained it all, the difference between it all. And if you remember Dr. Tom Costa, he used to come out and he said, if you're in judgment, you're like this. Well, you would think, so as soon as your mind says, well, you would think that they would have worn something different to church, or those shoes could have been polished, or you would have think. So you just filled it all in for the past that I've been waiting for 20 years. Let's give her another hand. I really would like to have a copy of those 3 prayers. They were fabulous. The one-liners and the one from the big book. Really, if you would email that to me, that was excellent on the reason why. I loved it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I missed the class now, Truly.